Okay, so today I'll be going to Buffalo, New York for the first time. I'm in Rochester right now, so it's about an hour drive. And so what that means is basically that I've never been there before, at least not that I remember, maybe as a kid, because I've been to Niagara Falls, but so you could go through it there, but effectively, not that I would remember, although I do remember Niagara Falls a little bit. Or maybe I went when I was a little older, but whatever. Effectively, Buffalo I haven't seen, but they're close to each other, so that's one of the concepts I could use, like, what seems extraordinary to you might be ordinary to someone else. And the reason why is because it's kind of like, if you live in Buffalo or near Niagara Falls, you'll be annoyed by it, almost like, whatever. It's just a part of life. It's no big deal. But for somebody like me or whoever, like, it's a big deal. It's a tourist destination, whatever the case may be. So, right, one man's trash, another man's treasure type of thing. So it's similar with the mind, and like, even seems like, it's so obvious, so do I really need to say it? Right, it's obvious, it's a subjective reality, but it's not just a matter of awareness or intelligence or something like that to see it. It's a matter of desire. You cannot dissuade with reason what came about by desire. One of my old catchphrases from my old debate format. It's like, so it's not just about logic and reason and truth. People have an incentive to not see the truth, right? They have an incentive to ignore it, to bypass it, to believe in, all kind of things like gods or, things that they know deep down are not true, but they take comfort, peace of mind, whatever it is. So there's an incentive to it, right? You could like disprove something like religion in a way that they believe it because they want to believe it. And the best way to demonstrate that is like historical basis, like people believe things like that, right? Whatever it might be, certain faiths, religions, at times in history where you didn't have the technological scientific knowledge that you have today. So a lot of the things that they said, superstitions and stuff, were just things that now we can explain with science. So the point is, so imagine that. So they were sure of it then, right? Whereas science still isn't sure of itself now. So like, that's the credibility check. Like, should you really be too sure of yourself? Like, you don't know how medical science works, but you want to say to the level that we do today, but you want to say, Jesus. What was that? What was that sound? You probably could hear it too. It's loud as hell. But you'll say Jesus came back to life, even though you don't know how medical science works, right? At that point. Like, so you're so sure. Imagine the arrogance of people, the ego of people to say, we know all the answers of how the universe was created before we even know how our own body works, how nature works, how weather works around. Like, we don't know anything. We still today don't know that much, but compared to history, at least it's better. But thousands of years ago, when we didn't know even the most basic scientific things compared to today, you would be willing to assert, think about the arrogance, the narcissism, the ego of that, the insanity of that, to say, but we know how the entire universe was created. Like, even if there was some God or whatever, how the hell would you know that when you don't even know how people are attributing stuff to gods to make it rain and like sacrificing animals? Like, you don't know how the world works, but you want to say how the universe works, how like that shows you it's purely ego, right? That doesn't provide the answer, but it shows you what people are operating on is not logic and reason. It doesn't matter to them. They just want peace of mind. They just want something. Hey, Jordan, how's it going? So yeah, I've never been here before. In fact, I've never been to this side of the state on my own, like past Rochester, unless it was as I was a kid. I've never been here, so even these roads are unfamiliar to me. Like, I just never had a reason to. I've been to the other side a lot, Albany and stuff, but Binghamton, somehow Watertown. But let's see what we got. Of course, it's not football season. Otherwise, I'll go to a Bills game while I'm there, which I don't know if I'd even really enjoy, but I'll stream from the Bills game and give live commentary. Like, I wonder to what extent that would be like, you're not really bothering anybody, right? If I have a seat, I'm sitting with a friend, I happen to be streaming. I don't think that, well, in a way, if I'm streaming the game itself, that's kind of like, oh, you're stealing the game, right? Even if it's a live thing. So I wonder to what extent that's allowed, actually. I'm surprised more people don't do that. Even if I don't show the game, I could just show myself, right? Like, whatever, giving commentary on the game or what. Like, nobody would even really notice or care, too. But what car do I have? I have a Honda. It's a good car, but it's getting up there in the miles now with a lot of this traveling that I do. But I have put a ton of work into it in the last year. Alright, so the thing is that I have, if you could see, the setup in here is crazy with all the different batteries and stuff I have going, because with the Starlink, well, you can see the Starlink there a little bit. Yeah, it's not bad. Okay, so the thing is that, what was the other thing I was saying? Okay, lack of credibility of people. Also, that ties into the clip that I just uploaded. People like YouTube Shorts, I guess, more than my long form videos. So that's what I've been doing. I've been taking these streams and cutting them up into 3-minute clips, and those actually get views, whereas these don't. That vertical format, even if it's the same exact content that you're doing otherwise, just take the same content, edit it, put it in a vertical format, and then like upload it like that, and just put like the hashtags for different categories. Like, I hate to say that, but it's actually seemingly good advice, because that's the kind of stuff that actually gets views, especially at the low level, because nobody knows who you are. So I can understand why, you're not established, so why would they watch a long video from somebody that they don't even know, right? Where am I going? I'm going from Rochester to Buffalo, New York. I just assume everybody always knows that I'm in New York, but you might not, of course. Could be from anywhere around the world. So it's about an hour drive. Traffic doesn't seem bad at all, actually. It's like, oh, I should, when I'm in these places, I should scour them for Krispy Kreme or something different that I don't have. Like, I'm shocked that Krispy Kreme just Charles Barkley's greatest nightmare, because he would always rave about the Krispy Kremes. He'll literally buy the franchise out because of how much he likes it. Okay, 17 miles on this road. I feel like there was one other topic I was going to get to, but I kind of forgot in the middle of that one. Yeah, it's just a nice late night drive. Not really that late, but some of these New York roads are a little bit comical. That, whatever, they're kind of, you can just feel the bump of it. You can blame the car maybe a little bit, but it's definitely limiting. But no, let's just look at the experience fallacy of like how people value themselves just in an inherent way. Like, something is more or less valuable because you're familiar with it, even if the way you became familiar with it was when you were young, before you could think for yourself. You were influenced, so you're insisting upon things that you didn't even choose to be exposed to, right? And you're taking pride in that, defining your identity by it, whatever. And then the flip side is that you basically, I don't know why, this should be like a 65, not a 55. You'll insist upon things that you didn't choose, that you were exposed to when you were younger, but you'll treat them like it's part of your identity, and that's how you're easily controlled. Because think about everything that you value. It doesn't mean it's bad or you shouldn't value it. It means that the reason why you place special emphasis on it is sort of arbitrary, because you didn't choose it. You're just insisting upon things that you were influenced by, exposed to. So if those things had been different, then you would have, you would have gravitated towards them instead, or you wouldn't value what you do value now. So if you realize that, that's what I call the self-actualizing from an inherent base state. When you get to a certain age, instead of insisting upon that, define your identity by it, you could instead say, like, just basically say, okay, I'm going to neutralize, equalize all that. Doesn't mean it's bad, but now I'm going to reset and then decide for myself what I value. Define your own standards. What is it that you value? Define them clearly, fully, with nuance, long form. Define your measure, as I call it. Like, what's the point of your life, purpose of your life, what do you value? And what people would find if they actually did that, which they don't even do that. So they don't really have standards or credibility. They just kind of mindlessly react, overcompensate, imbalance, whatever, uniform, mindless sheep state. But if they did that, they would realize how inconsistent they are, because the same things they claim to value as a pretense are not what they evidently observable practice, actions act in accordance with. So the other part is that they throw out human history, that would be a thing. So I think tomorrow I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to react live to I don't do that often. I'm going to react live to the Game 7 OKC / I do it like once a year. I'll pick like one game or maybe one of the finals games. So I did it last year to like the Game 7 Denver and OKC, and then like Game 7 Indiana, whatever. And like I did it with the Super Bowl one time. So I'll probably do that. I'll do a reaction just because that is kind of epic. I think the OKC will win, but people are clowning the hell out of them for the reffing and stuff. Which again, I don't really blame the players even for flopping, although I know people will complain about that. But it's more like it's the refs' fault, like this league's fault. Why are they calling that? Why are they calling that selectively? Right? They're letting sometimes it's like a giant type thing, like, oh, they won't call it as hard on Shaq. They'll let them beat Shaq up, and they won't call it because he's so big, so it looks like it doesn't affect him. But it's still objectively a foul. They're still hitting him. And just because he's so strong doesn't mean that should be held against him. And just because somebody's scrawny and weaker, it seems like now they deserve to do that, They deserve to get a foul. So don't blame the players as much, blame the refs. And that allows you to kind of, get perspective on it. It should be about an hour solid now. You won't be able to appreciate it much at night, I guess, but sometimes I say that too, like, just sometimes it looks better at night, like Albany, I notably said that with the lights and the whatever, kind of the lesser traffic and kind of give a cool vibe to it. But no, here's the thing, like social contrivance is a non-credible measure. It's curated, structured, ego, myopic, projection, incentivized, right? It's not an objective metric at all. Thought can be objective, although it often isn't, or people don't really think. So they're kind of fighting against that objectivity for selective, preferential, subjective reinforcement of a contrived state that they don't even choose, whatever. But what it means is that that element is very telling, because it means that I don't know, it's just the objective mind versus like the limited physical subjective myopic self that has incentives, that has limits, right? Whereas the mind is infinite objective. You can think about anything at any time, not defined, not reduced to your physical state. But social contrivance is often reduced to that. I guess it doesn't have to be, but that shows you it's constrained and it's curated and it dictates the outcome. So it's not credible at all. It's sort of self-fulfilling fallacy, right? Just, like think about the way that you have this empirical structure with it. It's like, if you engage in social contrivance, you can't be too objective or absolute with it, because then, it's like you have an ego or something. It'll be sort of shut down in a weird way, like, you're valuing that too much, or you're being too honest, and that's the bad thing. So you're forced to acquiesce to a lowest common denominator, which defeats the whole purpose. And then if you don't engage in it at all, then it's like, you lack the ability, and that'll too be projected by the insecure kind of basis. Like, like you'll be labeled like, oh, you lack the ability to do it, not that you simply choose something different, or you see through the process, or nothing else can exist. It's an absolute process, supposedly, but you either do it and you do it a certain way. So it's very curated, it's very structured, so you can defer to it, but then by deferring to it, the absolutists would see like, wait a second, you're deferring to it, but it's arbitrary, so your whole life is like, that doesn't define you. That's how society tries to define you, because they want to control you, label you, limit you, reduce you, but you don't have to be that. Okay, your objective in mind makes it harder to be a half-assed human function, zero-sum means, which, by the way, you don't really, or, oh, it wouldn't have been, this is one of my classic lines, actually, from a short story, like, it wouldn't have been bad for them, it would have been bad for everybody else. One of my key characters that I won't say too much, but, like, would it have been bad for them if they didn't, like, think about it in your regular person's case. Well, whatever would you do without your bread and circuses, convenience, and stuff like that? It wouldn't be bad for you. It'd be bad for society and contrivance, because, like, oh, now you wouldn't tolerate it, right? Oh, what would these people do without welfare? They might revolt. They might, do what they got to do. Like, so you can't have it both ways. It's like, that's the way that you're being trained and tamed and controlled like an animal, but it doesn't mean that, like, so, oh, would that be bad for you, or would it be bad for society? Because, like, what's the worst case? Oh, you don't have money, you don't have this and that, even in a highly curated, controlled state where, like, oh, people make money for all kind of dumb things, OnlyFans and stuff. So is it really a credible measure? And, people don't make money for all kind of meaningful things because, oh, they're not conducive to the controlled state that you're in. So the point is that, the way that works is kind of like, I don't know. It's like a curated thing that isn't to be taken too seriously. It's limited. Myopic people focus on appearance, pretense, performative aspects, how something is said. They focus on superficial ego elements that don't have any impact. So it's not about, like, oh, a personal thing. You could have the best performative aspects, you could have the worst, but it's just not a credible basis, so you would reject the basis overall. And as a result, you might be lacking in that regard, and then it'll be said that, oh, that's why you don't value it. See, it's the state versus perspective. You don't value the performative, superficial aspect because it's not credible, it can be manufactured, it can be manipulated. We see that throughout history, and because it's not tied to the inherent objective reality or thought or anything, but it's just used as a tool of control otherwise. So you wouldn't take it seriously, but then as a result you would neglect it, and then as a result of that it'll be projected like, oh, you lack the ability, that's why you don't value it. Not that you don't value it, that's why you seemingly lack the ability. So it's kind of like the way that people value supposedly one another. We value people, humans, be nice, gratify, but you don't value amalgam theory. Your whole lifestyle comes at their expense. You have exuberances, because there's no way to talk around that. Oh, you value other people, but depending on over a standard pretense, social contrivance, hierarchy, you wouldn't say I'm gonna sacrifice my whole lifestyle for amalgam theory. You're not gonna say that, right? You're not gonna do that. So, okay, so we got still about an hour. I feel like I said that like 10 minutes ago, but you get a taste of Buffalo, and then I'll show you tomorrow. But no, Rochester is nice. I actually like Rochester for some reason. It seems pretty good, pretty clean. Not bad. It's like a better, smaller version of Syracuse. Not as wide. Maybe I'm only seeing like the better parts of it, but yeah, even though I don't like AI, that dangerous AI guy is popping off when it comes to those. Like, let's just rate some of his ideas for these videos. He must be taking people's ideas in the comments and stuff, sure, but he comes up with so many good ideas for these videos, like Tony Parker yelling at somebody. It's so good. Watch. Shea confronts refs after Game 6 loss versus Spurs. I had three. I gotta listen to this like on a fucking thing, but he's yelling at the Rams after Game 6, wearing the Finding Nemo thing. Tony Brothers coming in for Game 7. Now that one wasn't too good, but Shea begs Tony Brothers to save him in Game 7. You know, people are really riding on the Spurs pretty hard, but they kind of suck. Or not that they suck, but I mean, it's not the best time to value it because it's just too soon, right? It's a great accomplishment what they've done already. If they were actually to win the title, I'd be shocked. Like, I can almost guarantee from the beginning they weren't going to win the title. How do I know that? Because how often does a team come out of nowhere like that and just win a title? Right? It almost never happens. They go from not making the playoffs to just winning the title. Then no, they'll go from that to now, they'll almost make the finals, and next year they'll make the finals and lose. Then then the year after that they'll win, or something like that. There's always a progression, like Detroit even. Detroit had an amazing season, even disappointing in the playoffs, but so next season they'll make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Then the year after that they'll make it to the finals. Then maybe the year after that they could win. Like, there's a progression to it that typically happens. Even with, I always make fun of that, even with the Miami Heat Big Three. They came together, so that should rig the system and help them win. But they still didn't win immediately. They took the year, they choked against Dallas, and then they came back and won the next year. Or even like this dude, the Warriors had already won, and then they get KD. So if a team, and that's the thing, that's not a surprise either. Like a team comes out of nowhere and wins, but that wasn't out of nowhere. They just won. They had just made the finals, Game 7, and then they had KD, so of course they should win. They're not coming out of nowhere to do that. The way that, some of these teams I was talking about. The Raptors in 2019, I guess, did that, right? They did come out of nowhere. I forget how good they were the year before, but they were kind of a solid playoff team, but not like... sometimes the Raptors were like a high seed, but, DeMar and Kyle Lowry and stuff, but... So yeah, I don't know what... There's all these weird towns that you would have never heard of otherwise. That's exit before toll. Okay, so now we should be getting on the thruway proper. Yeah, there's a lot of just like ego insistence, not really, that's what most social contrivance is. It's kind of insisting upon the self and your limited myopic experience, ignorance, insistence, but not really operating on a standard. Right. And the reason why is because Yeah, I can't decide if I like the day or nighttime driving better. I'm gonna just react to something. I don't really feel like talking. So Niagara Falls 59. I mean, that's a great attraction for it, I'm sure. Right, Buffalo to Niagara Falls, obviously. Sometimes it'll try to hook up to this shit, to the thing itself. Wait. Wait, but it's not working. Yeah, like everything will be framed as an ego thing, even if everything will be framed as an ego thing, even if it doesn't apply. The rare moment Chuck refused donuts inside the NBA, just speaking of Krispy Kreme. Ozempic. Fasting, you eating faster, good one. Just the idea that like thinking is bad or whatever, freedom is bad, thinking is bad, variable's bad, because it upsets the half false absolute state you're in. So that's how society kind of preys on cognitive dissonance. The best way to control people is like, if we put you in a state by force, by structure, by curation, by indoctrination before you can think for yourself, you'll insist upon it because you don't want to admit or acknowledge the state that you're in is wrong, or not even wrong, but like not absolute, or not the thing you would choose, or not, exclusionary to everything else. So it's just one thing that happened, a result, but it's sort of arbitrary. Even like society as a whole or whatever is like that. The way that okay, why is it the way it is? It's not really with some careful design as much as, it's by force, by monopoly, by, incentives. It just wears the mask of progress or something. It's just a pretense. Wind is crazy, combined with the bad roads. Look at this, you can feel it. Here, I'll open the window to let you test it. Unthinking state as an incentive for human functionalism, but it places a value on overextension. Because what kind of sense does that make? The purpose of life is, okay, people will have kids and then they'll struggle, or there'll be some conflict, like something to be conveniences, machination. It's about a logical, consistent process. What you do is concerned with your survival. You might be like, you're working harder in nature or something, but you would do it yourself. You're not beholden to corporate interests, government interests. You're not a slave to those type of things. You just insist upon it. You overextend, you preserve the stimulatic meaning, false meaning it means, half-mass hedonism. So what that means is, is that the Attica from the famous Dog Day Afternoon? Attica, is it here, of all places, or that must be somewhere else? That's in California. It's the same name, I bet. I don't know. But no, it's a situation where you basically you're basically able to there's no thought process to it. It's just this endless cycle that sits upon itself. Means validation, bypassing, rather than some finality of a sound process, consistent measure, no matter what it is. Allowing, it's about quantity rather than quality. Human life itself is treated that way. You'd rather have more people, more excesses, more machination, more convenience, even though those things are just reaction, relief, overcompensation to non-choice zero-sum needs, basically. So none of that is providing a measure or a basis for them, a purpose, a meaning, whatever you want to call it. It's just reacting to it to varying degrees. And so just you would rather have more people, more excesses, more overcompensation than to ever address the inherent objective standard there, have a more full human experience where they can be fully free. Not a lot of zero-sum means necessary for that, but they're free. They're free, they're uninhibited. They're, remove the need. They're able to be fully free and objective and aware in their mind. They don't have to censor reality. They don't have to, not be at peace with their own natural self. That would be the state that you're looking for versus the low standard of collective overextension that insists upon itself that the biggest hit to your credibility is the preserving the stimuli acme, as I always talk about. So it's too bad. Like when everything is personalized in a certain way, right, it makes sense that you would do that because you'd be controlled, right, nobody can be objective or anything. Buffalo, 30 miles. Again, being aware of the nature of the process versus pretending. So people want to be exploited or bypass control, but the real control, this is like the initial versus the larger nuanced kind of discussion, you're always being controlled by something. So it's like, oh, you don't want to be made aware of that and you want to be fooled by somebody else in a stimuli acme specification hedonistic way, right? Oh, you want them to swoop you up and distract you, but you only want that to distract from the real control in society itself that you just concede and resign yourself to. So you never want to be truly free, you just give up. That's what society tries to do. It tries to make you selfish. Unconditionality, standard measure can't exist. Try to personalize everything, everything's about the ego, can't just be a standard process, credible merit, social contrivance, ego, emotions, how the mediocre rule the masses, rule by omission protocol, to make you give up on a true value basis, where you value things not on a personal subjective level, not your ability to cope and tolerate with the contrivance state, which varies from era to era, that it's about you, whether you can cope with this contrivance state or not, rather than actually having a standard as far as what the basis should be, right? It's about you, your ability or inability to cope with the contrivance state or overcompensate for it, whatever, acquiesce to it. What if that contrivance state was World War II Germany, China right now, so you're doing it in service of that. Oh, it's your inability to do that absolute thing. Not that it isn't absolute, not that it could be flawed, not a lot of things. So it's a situation where, just kind of flips it on the individual. Somebody at peace, I always like to use that analogy, somebody who's totally at peace, but they're bothered by others. So to others, it would seem like, oh, they're always in a bad mood, but they're only in a bad mood because you're bothering them. Whereas they're at peace, they don't need you. You're bothering them. You need something from them. Or what it means is the way in which you're controlled is kind of let me think. Tries to personalize everything on the ego as absolutist, subjective, whatever. People have immense potential. They can tolerate anything, but why should they tolerate it in service of a contrivance state? So it's you can't deal with blank, such and such thing in modern society. It's Well, you could deal with it. You could also deal with one meal a day. You could also deal with sleeping on the ground in the woods. You could also deal with picking berries. You could deal with a lot of things. But why should you? This is entitlement. Why should you deal with that when you yourself? You might say, well, what right do you have to give that up? But what right does anybody have to take that? Especially, you're growing up in a world where that's already established. So even if you think, oh, they earned it, it wouldn't matter because you didn't have a chance to earn it yourself. So how does that make sense, right? You're deferring to things as if they have value and credibility, but they're already established before you were even there. And again, it could have just been by force. It could have been by, something you would question. And it could have been like, sort of arbitrary and just... that specification, ego, insistence is a gratification placeholder over compensation rather than just true value measure basis standard, right? Sacrifice of self, just have a standard, hold accountable, because that's what creates a true merit basis by which if you truly hold everybody accountable fully, no selective ego, cult of personality thing, you realize, oh, nobody's really fit to have any power or do anything like that because we're all flawed, but you myopically curate an image of certain people. Right, they're all flawed. You would discredit them all then. Freedom means basis, like, oh, let's look at privilege. Of all it would take to free you of contrivance would be to remove the need, would be zero-sum means. That means that's all it takes to control you, so that's not credible. Means validation could be used to validate anything that, right, you have to bow to the monopoly over that. But it also is you're a slave to your own convenience, stuff like that. You could be a minimalist, starve it out to some extent, but you're still forced to acquiesce to its standards. You're not allowed to be free and do that on your own, so you have to do it through the established monopoly, corporate state. Iroquois something. But that's what the Native Americans say, like, oh, look, not only did they kill us all or whatever, take all our land, but they stole our names and places too, or, they're not creative enough to come up with their own names. Six Flags. Why do I never see signs for that anywhere ever? I think maybe it's something I don't pay attention, but like I've never seen that anywhere that I've gone, even recently. Or maybe there's just not typically signs for it. I remember when I was a kid, I went to these Busch Gardens one. I don't know if they're still around. That was more like in the southern U.S., like Virginia, whatever area. It was Busch Gardens, like a amusement park. Be like everything through the ego lens basis is a flawed process, right? Because then you're competing about the self endlessly, arbitrarily, competing over appearances. But if you're aware of the nature of the process, whatever, you wouldn't do that because you'd be like, you're aware behind closed doors, such and such of human nature, and you wouldn't be taken in by the performative aspects that, oh, the only reason why they're presenting themselves that way is because they're self-aware too, and they can present what they want you to react to, but it doesn't make it true. Or it's not even a true or false thing. It's like it doesn't make it absolute exclusionary to everything else is the thing, right? close those are to each other. That's kind of crazy. I didn't know it was, like, I knew they were in the same area, but literally 10 miles from one. So again, people who live in Buffalo probably find it boring, the Niagara Falls. They can see it every day, so then what? What's the big deal? So part of it is, scarcity creates value. It's like nothing is really impressive. It's just your unfamiliarity with it. Again, the ego experience versus a standard. There's no standard, it's just random stuff. But the drive itself isn't that exciting. It's just the same shit every time. But once you get closer or in town, right, then it gets better. I gotta have like guest people on or something if my channel blows up now with these stupid shorts. But it's just very odd the way that I do things. But the YouTube thing has been pretty good. I mean, I could just as easily do this on Twitch, but somehow it works better here. Like for this kind of content. If I play a game, I still kind of want to do it on Twitch, but I'm not sure. And like Twitch doesn't do the best job of like creating new interest. It's more like taking the interest you already have and then, I don't know. And ultimately, the greatest claim to fame of YouTube is just like when I go to stream on Twitch, what do I do with the VODs once I'm done? Oh, I want to go and upload them to YouTube anyway. Whereas it's not that way. Like, oh, if I do something on YouTube, then I don't feel the need to do it on Twitch. I'm not uploading it there or something. There's no need. So you end up, all roads lead to YouTube anyway, right? Unless you want to do TikTok or some dumb thing, but for a second here. You still hear me though? There's like a path of least resistance idea that, like, why bother? Why even, compete over something that you don't even necessarily want? You can say, oh, you only pretend you don't want it because you can't have it, kind of thing. But what you want is in part peace and freedom. So if you have to sacrifice that for something that's not worth it, right, would be kind of the thing. It's not too far from, oh, I shouldn't turn that on. It's not too far from Rochester. This will get a concept to do with like brain rot stuff. Like, oh, it's dumb, but it's more like adults taking seriously or ironically. But in reality, it's the same way everything's always worked. People couldn't explain what they value or why they value it. They just expose to something and then they mindlessly repeat it. So it's just kind of like they don't even know why they value it. They don't really have a standard. It's arbitrary, random. But children have always valued silly stuff like that. So, or even adults too, like comedy and subversive things. So, you know, there's like a self-awareness, ironic effect to it in the modern day. It gets so boring seeing the same things everywhere. Like, look at this. Popeyes, Burger King, Dunkin'. Like, why? Why? Give us something different, dude. You must, as Gandhi said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world, I guess. And then you'll become the very thing you swore to destroy. Right, you create your own oppressors, your own ruler. Yeah, like if you're at peace, neutral kind of thing, non is false negative, because other people need to control you somehow, or they need to, you know, they'll have like certain incentives and stuff. Everybody sees it in others but not in themselves. Self-awareness is because that's why the human eyes see outward. They don't look at themselves in a literal sense. So you're not aware of what you're doing, or you treat it differently. But objectively, right, it's just about the truth, right? Shouldn't the truth matter? Shouldn't reality matter? Or is it more about some selective thing that you're trying to frame, and in which case you're not credible anyway, but you're trying to frame reality a certain way. You know, that's again, I go back to like the child defiance or whatever kind of thing, rejecting the overcompensations. It's like there is no basis to control and train a human being like an animal. There's no basis to do it. So it doesn't matter how you overcome. You give them all the money in the world, all the gifts in the world, all that doesn't matter. That's where social contrivance uses a placeholder overcompensation, but it reinforces the unqualified subversive state, indoctrination. Like, it doesn't justify doing that. There is no basis to do that, right? Especially within a corporate empirical. So you could take, that's kind of the same logic people would use. Like, oh, it's it's the same logic people would use. Like, for example, you want a piece of it yourself, or oh, you're jealous, or you can't achieve it. Not that you reject the basis, the process itself is unsound. Like, that's like, but people compete over trying to hide their inherent natural self. What if you're at peace with your inherent natural self, and there's like an imbalance over compensation or oppression leads to possession fallacy with respect to the, you know, like, then people end up desiring that in a weird way anyway. Like, oh, why do fetish discussion moment? Why do people like to, you know, like feet as a fetish? Or, you know, my most viewed clip on this channel, 12,000 views or something. Like, fuck, man. Like, why do people like that? Or, oh, they want to buy some girl's socks or something, or smell their whatever. Like, why do they want to do that? Because that's more truth and honest in that, because that relates more to the inherent natural self that you normally hide from and deny and condemn. But that gets to the root of it, like, oh, that's naturally what we are, or what we like, or our natural self, versus all these pretenses we put up, right, that we don't necessarily value. inner state experience. For what it's worth, but ooh, I should do my phone test thing. I'll have my phone in my pocket and pretend to be talking on the phone, and then be streaming and talking Absolutist philosophy. Of course, the half-master in all-America city. Shouldn't it be an all-American city? It comes with NA grammar, am I right? But no, it's like the half-mass can't tolerate objectivity, whereas objectivity, absolutists can tolerate and do tolerate and defer to contrivance. But contrivance by force, by empirical structure, establishment, overcompensation, bypass, indoctrination, they, seem to validate themselves. But if you actually look at the nature of the process, be aware of the nature of the process, then you'll see the artifice of that indeed. Right, that with that same process you could seem to validate anything, and history would kind of indicate this as means validation. You don't really have any standards, it's kind of arbitrary. There'll be certain rules, right, that show you everything's in service of contrivance, like it'll be illegal to do certain things, right, but only in service of that. So like, it would be illegal to sleep in the woods, or like, it's private property or something, but then you do that in service, like, but it's okay for Walmart and big companies and everybody to own all these things, and like, so it's really to protect them, the big corporations, right? It's a bad thing for some random individual to do something that isn't really hurting anybody, but they're too free, so they can't be controlled. So the things that are illegal, it's like, it's bad to do it until the big corporations do it. Then it's okay to do that same exact thing, even to a greater degree. So, if you pick berries, you're stealing, you're doing something bad for the environment. You do one little... like the performative aspect, you have to think about, like, the person who puts up all the appearances of effort is like as if they have to overcompensate for something, versus the one who's at peace, who's aware of the nature of the process. They have nothing to hide, but that's somehow projected as a negative. Like, you have nothing to hide, so you come off as bland or boring or neutral. Wait, but the Niagara Falls exit comes before the Buffalo. Or they kind of come together, but... yeah, like everything's an egotistical basis, so you're exposed to certain things, and then it's like a battle of preconceived notions, which might seem cute, or you value them, but really it's dumb, because it's like, you value it just because you're familiar or not, and the way that you became familiar isn't necessarily credible at all. Again, it's never that, oh, that's bad, or you shouldn't do that, or you should do something else. It's that it's not absolute exclusive to everything else, so just, it just is. Yeah, how are these cones not blowing over in this insane amount of wind that we have? What the fuck? One bro's full-time job is just picking these things up all day. I don't know exactly where it's taking me, but I won't take that exit. I'll take another one here in like 5 miles. I don't know, I like this nighttime driving sometimes. That drive back from Maine was so crazy, like 6 hours, just kind of pushing through it. Yeah, it's like the fallacy of like, oh, if you have something to hide versus why do people care, right? They're outwardly insisting. Why are they looking versus why are you hiding? And even their framing or their judgment, it's like, oh, that seems to validate there's something negative about it, but it's really just you're aware how stupid people are or what their preconceived notions and projections are. So there might not be anything wrong with it, but you're aware that they think it would be, right, for some ignorance of their own. But that doesn't validate it. It's like you acknowledge the power of a tyrannical empire, so you acquiesce to their rules, or you try to hide stuff from them. It's like you're aware and acknowledge their power. That doesn't mean you vouch for it or defer to, validate it. And then, human beings in that way can be used as currency. Like, oh, how can that many people be wrong type of thing. So they seem to validate anything then. You get enough people on board, you get enough technology on board. You can do World War II Germany, you can do China right now, you can do anything. Like, you can show the nature of the larger process, but then people will try to justify it specifically, say, oh, but this isn't World War II Germany, so that makes it okay. But you would do effectively the same thing. Why should that be necessary? Why should that be necessary? Whether it be force, whether it be means validation, whether it be some bypass of critical thinking. Overcompensation is the basis. Appeal to ego is the basis. This is how you're controlled. Just remember the reason, reaction, appearance thing. Like, oh, you would lack the appearance that society needs to control itself and reinforce its contrived state because you keep up the illusion. But like, what if you want to reveal the illusion? What if you don't care? What if you don't value that? Oh, you lack the ability to do it. False emperor has no close fallacy. False absolute to value thing. But what if you don't care about that? It would be your inability to do it, not that it's a flawed process. But you have like these little drones of big overcompensation, overextended monopoly corporations to try to peddle their shit. And it's like, it's just people sell out very easily. What if you had true standard value? Like, oh, you'd be doing what I'm doing now, and oh, if you need zero-sum means to do it. It's more like they need zero-sum means to stop you from doing it. What if you just don't vouch for it? What if you just don't? You can't be bought. You can't be bribed by your ego. Because it's not about you, it's about a standard, right? That otherwise people don't have. Their cognitive dissonance coping with their reinforcing. Like, everything's reactionary, so it would be conditional. Like, okay, you'll put up with it, but you're not going to be happy about it and indignantly insist upon it. But people cognitive dissonance, in their cognitive dissonance, will do that. but everything's a conditional reactionary state. Like, we try to remove the need, assume a negative nature of people, but ideally we can self-govern, or, we don't need all that. Like, even self-governance is being framed as an outward is a fallacy. It's not an outward thing. It's like, it would be a removal of the need for overextended empirical structure, stimuli acme preservation, problematic, but okay, now we should be here in downtown Buffalo in Canada. This is kind of cool. It's my first time seeing something that feels like I probably should have seen it. But no, it's like everything is in your imagination. Everything's a reaction to thought anyway. So it doesn't really matter. If you're aware of the larger process, you wouldn't be taken into the specifics instead of competing amongst them. Initial minded-based reactionary physical externality versus, you're aware of the larger process, so it really wouldn't matter to you. That's why you'd be at peace, but therefore not able to be controlled by something. And that really shows you that, especially comes out with female privilege, stimuli acme. Or even just in general, social contrivance, ego. They're so desperate to subvert meritocracy that it's a tool to that end. Like, let's make it about ego, let's make it about social contrivance, let's make it about stimuli acme. So they'll do the best way to test that is like force people to just actually let their actions speak for themselves and merit, but then you realize there's nothing special and there's no basis to specify. So even like the stimuli acme, like, let's say your fetish this is a great social experiment. Your fetish is something really nuanced and specific, like, some psychological thing that you want them to do. So it's not sexual. You'll realize how much people will struggle with that. It's like, that's a weird fetish or blah, blah, blah. It's more like, they lack the creativity and imagination to do it. And they want to rely on the physical and social contrivances because they're lazy and uncreative. That's what it is. They just want the privilege and non-accountability. It'll be posed as a standard, like, look at this person with this weird fetish versus, look at this lazy, hedonistic animal who wants to rely on their base physical state because they're not creative enough to do anything else. Like, you get to see a little downtown Buffalo here. First look, doesn't look too bad. A little bit of a late night time to see it, but not bad. This place seems really really open. Like, there's a lot of empty space here. Like, you could be aware of the nature of the larger process versus accept, bypass, false absolute, reinforce. You don't want to reinforce, overcompensate, cope with it, or do you want to see the truth of reality and not be taken in? Tarantino. We speak of the devil. Tarantino foods. Speak of the foot fetish that we just can't escape it. But I like how that would define, you're that guy who made that foot fetish video because, again, does that define me? I've made a lot of other videos too. Myopic marginalization, but you're defined by the audience or others. Like, you make 100 videos. I've said this a million times. You make 100 videos on your channel, and they're all equal length, equal effort, equal whatever quality, and you put the same amount of effort into them, right? And they're all on vastly different subjects. But then out of those 100 videos, the one video that had to do with sexual things, let's say, gets 1 million views, and all the others get like a couple hundred or less. So, you're that guy who made that video about sexual things. So you'll be defined by that. But that doesn't define you because you made the other 99 videos too. And you might value those just as much. But because of what other people value, you're defined by the values of others. So it's like a projected basis, right? So people jump through hoops to get zero-sum functionalism means, but no standard, no measure, and they struggle with the same half-mass thing. But people aren't even aware or at peace themselves. So they'll keep projecting other things. It's the whole irony. You have to walk around eggshells for them, but you're at peace and they're not. Like, that's what it means. Like, you might be at peace, aware of the nature of the process. Like, it just is. It's no big deal. Everything just is. Versus them, oh, they're not at peace with it. They have to project. They have to, overcompensate. They have to be controlled by it. They, stimuli, acme, kind of propaganda stuff. You're at peace, but they're not. And you have to acquiesce to their myopic worldview that projects versus, oh, everything just is. It's no big deal. But they need to peddle it a certain way, either to justify their own control or to control others with it, privilege. There's too much of an incentive with that stimuli privilege, often in one direction. That's why the trans movement is actually great karma for female privilege. Is like, why do you think it goes? Why would that be an issue? Okay, you can be whatever gender you want. Why is that an issue? Oh, it's because there's certain privileges given to women all these years, all this time, that men now want to benefit from, whether it be just the general stimuli acme privilege, being spoiled, or sugar baby culture, or whatever, sports privilege, kind of, like, all that privilege is the issue. It's not the issue of, right? So it reveals that. Why is there such a strong incentive in one direction to say that? Like, but so yeah, you have to keep up appearances, and the reality is, if you were to do something to truly free people, it wouldn't be allowed by the forces that already exist. So it doesn't validate them at all. They're insecure, monopolies, possessive. You have all this machination, all this thing, and what do you do with it? You use it to reinforce yourself, not to free people, not to remove the need, as the absolutist would do. The absolutist king, in a dramatic way, ending their own reign to, free everybody, rather than like gaining total power just so you can remove power altogether. And so, right, it's a means to an end to free people. Alright. Okay, I'll end here, so it's fine.